Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Progress America Unfiltered. I'm Tyler, and I'm here today with Rhett and Jocelyn to talk about all things inequality. We have a lot of topics to cover, so I want to jump right into it. But the main topics we're going to cover this show is school lunch debt. We're going to talk about another strike going on in the hot labor autumn movement. And then we're also going to talk about Social Security and Medicare because you know that's one of our favorite topics. So to kick us off, Jocelyn, do you want to let us know what's going on with student lunch debt across the country?
Yeah. So the long and short of it is kids are being held accountable for not having money for school lunch, which can, like, the average is $3 to $4 a school lunch, which might sound like not a lot of money, but if you're a family with multiple kids and you're making a lower income, that adds up really, really quickly. And you're seeing all these stories of people who make $40,000, which is too high to receive subsidized lunch, but is not high enough to feel financially stable in the United States of inflation America. And they don't receive any subsidies or any help. And their kids, if they go to lunch and they want a school lunch, they can receive one, but they're held culpable for debt. And the average child right now has, on average, a debt of $180, which is like, for a child, you know what I mean? That might not seem a lot of money if you're like a working professional without kids. But as a parent, right? If you have 3 kids and each of them are a few $100s in debt, that becomes a paycheck very quickly. During the pandemic, there were a lot of really great programs that helped families that were struggling, but most of those have been rolled back or stopped entirely. And people are still hungry. And that's a just wild thing to contemplate in what is the richest country in the world.
Yeah, Jocelyn, I completely agree. This is just something that, has been top of mind for so many people for so long. And when I went to elementary school in Florida. And so I remember one day I got called out for having student lunch debt from a person working the lunch line at my elementary school. And that is just one of those memories that like stick with you through adulthood. So it's like nearly 2 decades later. And I remember that feeling of like not really understanding what like student lunch debt was. I remember my teacher had to explain it to me. My mom had to eventually pay it off. These things are really scary and they stick with kids for a long time. And it's one of those things where it's like the government or these educational institutions are holding it against kids that literally just are trying to not go hungry in the pursuit of an education. And this just kind of makes me think about, what reminded me of this topic before we saw this legislation come out, which we will talk about too, about how they're trying to cancel this student lunch debt, was I'm scrolling on TikTok and I see a few good Samaritans going to local elementary schools and paying off student lunch debt for kids that have lunch debt just at various elementary schools. But I think so often is the point is good policy or like good things happening should not be reliant on the good Samaritans among us. This should be something that is fixed on an institutional level. So we're not seeing kids go hungry or them accumulating student lunch debt. Like, what is this student lunch debt supposed to be? Is it just like their entry level debt so they can figure it out what debt is so they're ready to take on student loan debt later in life? Debt should not be a part of education.
I love that you bring that up, Rhett, because something we talk a lot about on here is how the normalization of debt in post-Reaganomics America is like such a big tool of oppression in this country. It's like, oh yeah, like just put that medical debt, student debt, housing debt. It's all normal. It's fine. You'll get back to the top of the heap when, of course, like we know that's not true. Most people will die with these kinds of debts unpaid.
Absolutely. I actually saw a TikTok this week about how, the United States is basically just a debtor's economy. We are conditioned to be in debt. The car that you drive every day that you feel like you own because you have control of it, physically, is still not yours. You paid a loan for it and you're paying, as long as you're paying monthly payments, you don't own that car yet. Our houses, we're paying our debts to the banks with our mortgages for 30 years. Yes, it's your house because you live in it, but you don't own it. It is their house and they are letting you work towards buying it. And I think all of that starts as early as, what we're seeing with elementary school children, kindergarteners having lunch debt, as if they could pay for it themselves. And it's pretty gross. I think we need policy solutions to address this. And it seems like we're working towards them. It looks like some senators, including Sheldon Whitehouse and Fetterman and Peter Welch, have proposed the School Lunch Debt Cancellation Act of 2023 in order to cancel student lunch debt nationwide, which would be a big deal and I think level the playing field for a lot of students.
Absolutely. And just, I love like the overarching topic here that Jocelyn highlighted of economic inequality by proxy of debt is such a mechanism of oppression in this country. So like Jocelyn, we talked a little bit about this petition that we're working on right now circulating. So an organization I'm a part of for marijuana legalization called Bullpack, we highlighted how very similar to our like approach to ending the war on drugs and with the Student Lunch Debt Cancellation Act, both of those things are rooted in the understanding that economic inequality is something that keeps people in debt for generations, right? So like keeping them away from access to things like food, keeping them away from access to things like funding for their education are just very important things. So economic inequality is definitely a tool of oppression.
And if you can keep people frantically busy trying to calculate for their own survival, they don't have time to educate themselves, to think more broadly about, wow, is this system fair? Is this system equitable? Does this provide me the opportunity? Like, despair is a very powerful tool for oppression, because if you can keep people's minds perpetually occupied with anxiety and like minor petty grievances between the working class, they have no energy left to be like, wow, maybe America shouldn't be a weapon of greed and war. Maybe that's bad. Maybe we should do something about that.
Totally agree. And I don't think in this day and age should any parents have to decide between, putting food on their child's table. So anyway, moving away from financial inequality, we're going to talk about the current state of the fight for labor rights in this country, which is exciting. And we've seen so much in the movement for labor rights. Over the summer, we called it Hot Labor Summer. Now we've moved into Crisp Labor Autumn. And there is a major strike going on at Kaiser Permanente. About 75,000 workers participated in the strike across multiple states to demand higher wages and better staffing levels. This is honestly a historic deal, and it would provide like across the board wage increases for the next 4 years and address a lot of the concerns of striking employees, which is like being overworked and underpaid, which is something that I think we've seen across the board in different industries, but especially those who work in healthcare. It's important to ensure that they're being paid properly and being taken care of. But these strikes are going to have a wider impact, especially the one that was on October 4th. They were part of this larger movement of the labor rights section. And so what are your all's thoughts on the future of the labor rights movement, this latest strike? We've seen it with UPS. We've had the WGA and the SAG-AFTRA strikes, and we've seen how effective time and time again, collectively bargaining for better workplace conditions has worked out for us. So I don't know, what are y'all's thoughts on that?
I find it all incredibly exciting. And I love to see that, our age group and just everyone alive in America right now is really seizing on the political efficacy that's in our hands. Like, our labor makes this country run. It's not the labor of some random wealthy jerk off sitting in a Manhattan penthouse. Like, we are the people that are keeping this country running. And the ability to say, hey, I'm not doing anything until you create the livable conditions for my labor to be like, to receive what it should receive. Like, we are creating this, we have created this place. We should be able to benefit, and not even benefit, just survive. Like, how low these asks have been with everyone, the railroad workers, the Hollywood strike, like, people are asking for basic living conditions and are being gaslit and shamed in the media, by politicians, by executives. And I love that we're just not having it. I think that's incredibly powerful.
I definitely think that the organizing that we're seeing from so many unions or people seeking unions across the country is definitely frightening to people of like the upper echelon of these big corporations, for sure. The anti-union propaganda that we've seen like for the past like 40 years in America has been so incredibly pervasive. And unions have been, labeled everything from like violent organizations to like they're trying to take all of your paychecks to all of that. But like, I think the age of social media has really shown us just like how untrue those claims can be. Looking at footage from like the Kaiser Permanente strike to see so many people that are already so overworked coming out and standing on a picket line in solidarity with one another to really like show a mutual support for themselves, for their coworkers, for their families, taking a stand for what they absolutely deserve is super empowering. And this continues to be a blueprint that can be followed at other organizations as well. So I think for those upper echelon CEOs that don't want to see fair wages, more equality, watch out.
And just pay your workers. That's the funniest thing, right? Like, Americans are not exactly known for our like firebrand culture. Like, if you just pay people equitably, we'll typically chill out, right? Like, that's like our like, so we're a very positive country. Typically, if you are not like police brutalizing us, killing us, making housing, healthcare, and food just like totally inaccessible, Americans are pretty friendly. So it seems to me that if I were a billionaire, I would just make things better for my own sake. It's in everybody's self-interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the clients I work with is Iron Pack, and something that we like to say, like a riff on something we say all the time, is like the answer to corporate greed is collective organizing. And, I think as long as we stay together and continue to organize, we'll see. We've already seen changes, and we've seen, the WGA have major wins against the 9 major production studios. We've seen UPS workers and the Teamsters Union, push for the electrification of car batteries to be built in America, which will not only like help, greenify this sector, but also provide more good jobs. Like, I think we've seen wins time and time again this year, especially. So I'm glad to see these wins with Kaiser Permanente. I'm excited to see these wins continue in other sectors. And yeah, I mean, stand with workers always, like, don't be a scab, don't cross a picket line, stand with workers. And if you own a company, pay your workers what they deserve. And that's basically the tea on that. Well, we've got one more topic to cover on this show, something we love, love, love to talk about. And that is, shocker, Social Security. So I've heard that there's going to be some changes to Social Security for American citizens. There's going to be a cost of living change. Rhett, do you want to tell me a little bit about what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. So Social Security benefits and supplemental security income payments will be seeing an 8.7% increase, which translates to more than $140 extra per month for an average of 70 million Americans. So this is a really big deal. And this is known as the cost of living adjustment, or COLA, as they like to call it, which I remember as like Diet Coca-Cola because I'm obsessed with Diet Coke. I hate to say it. But yeah, this 8.7% increase is going to be the highest increase since 1981. Way back then, it was 11.2%. But this hike is definitely substantial, and it's in response to like this higher inflation rate that we're seeing in other economic factors. But this story really comes back to this idea of organizing, right? When we organize for things like increased Social Security, supplemental income payments, we will see wins on issues like these. But I think on inverse to that, so while we're talking about an increase for approximately 70 million Americans, with that number 70 in mind, we see some Republicans in the House of Representatives right now, some vying for the speakership, that want to see the retirement age go up to 70. So more money for 70 million Americans, or retirement age up to 70. So really interesting stuff there. I think this pays tribute to us in our need to organize for things like Social Security, to have systems in place that are available for us as we get older. But hey, also for people that are getting older right now, because people should not have to work until they're 70.
Yeah, and I think, we talk about this all the time on this show, but it's it's mind-blowing that we have to have so many conversations about a program that we as American workers are financing for ourselves. Like, this is not a benefit. This is a savings account that we pay into with our labor. And so it's always encouraging to win. And we have to, like, you know, own that, like marinate in that positivity, and also realize, like, this is not an entitlement in the sense that we feel entitled to it. It's something we are entitled to because it's our money. And yeah, I think that's something that the Republicans are so good at obfuscating.
Yeah, and something we also talk about all the time is that, Social Security, Medicare, these are things that are universally popular. These are something that are popular with the constituents in these Republican districts, which is why they love to go for a closed door meeting or, try to obfuscate what they're trying to do with complex language like sunsetting and things like that. Because the truth is, they know that if their constituents find out that they are trying to cut their earned benefits, they would not be happy and they would not get reelected. So it's important that we recognize that we have all earned Social Security and Medicare. All of us know somebody who's on it or will be on it ourselves sometime in the near future, and we deserve to have the benefits that we have paid for. And do what we continue to do, which is call out Republicans every time they try to keep us from getting those benefits we deserve. But that said, I'm all here for a cost of living adjustment. I'm all here for more money. Not here for delaying a retirement age. I love to say that just because Republicans want to work until their last breath does not mean Americans should have to. And that is something that I stick by. So yeah, at the end of the day, we love Social Security and Medicare, and we won't let them take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to that, there's an additional proposal for an extra $2,400 per year for Social Security recipients. And so if this was approved, this would be about an additional $200 in each monthly check for those who are current recipients or who will turn 62 in 2023. So this just further highlights that when we organize for Social Security, it does work, right? Like, it's very unpopular for people to be against Social Security, as you highlighted, with Republicans that are trying to sunset, hurt, or harm Social Security and the various creative ways that they go about doing it. But in the face of all of that, we've still organized and we are successful in the small wins with making sure that we protect Social Security. But this is something that people have to keep an eye out on, because the Republican attacks on it are not going to end. The Republicans and the extremism in the House of Representatives and all levels of government for which Republicans are present in their current form are attacking programs like this that so many people rely on. So we really just got to pay attention to it for sure.
Absolutely. And if you or anyone you know or love, or especially yourself in the future, is going to rely on Social Security and Medicare, aka you're not already a billionaire, make sure that you are talking to your representatives, talking to your senators about how important it is for you for this program to stay fully funded, and that you get every cent that you have already put into it and every cent that you deserve.
And I love that Tyler highlighted not a billionaire, because I talk to boomers all the time who I think of as affluent or wealthy, and like, they still rely on these benefits. These are really important. Like, just because you're upper middle class, you feel like you're paid, you're good, like, you still need health care. You still need, like, at a time in your life where you're not able to, like, work and generate income like you could in your 30s and 40s. Like, it is going to be your lifeline at some point. And you're going to wish you protected it when you were our age.
115%. Yeah, nobody thinks it's you until it's going to be you. So let's just make the world a better place for everyone. And when you need these services, they will hopefully be there for you because we will have invested in them. But that said, this has been a very interesting conversation. We've talked about so many different things and the different ways that equality has been showing up, and that we've been fighting it, which I love to see. And we are going to keep you guys updated. We're hopefully going to have an episode next week about what's going on in the speakership in the House of Representatives. So make sure you tune in to Progress America Unfiltered wherever you can find us. And we will see you guys next time. Bye.